All eyes are on New Orleans this weekend as the Kansas City Chiefs look to three-peat against the Philadelphia Eagles in the biggest game of the year. It's a rematch of just 2 years ago when the Chiefs defeated the Eagles in the title game. We're just about 48 hours away from kickoff in the iconic Caesars Superdome, but game day comes just a few weeks after the New Year's Day terror attack in the French Quarter, when an Army veteran drove his truck down a packed Bourbon Street, killing 14 and injuring dozens more. He also planted several IEDs around the quarter that did not go off. Now the city is beefing up security. For the latest updates, we're bringing in NewsNation's Connell McShane. Connell, it's so great to see you, and it's so nice to interview. I feel like the tables are normally turned, so good to see you on Hill TV today.
You too, Julia.
The city was shaken after the attack after New Year's Day. Many expressed concern that it would cause tourists to rethink their trips to New Orleans. But walk us through some of the security changes that have been made to keep both players and fans safe during one of the biggest events of the year.
Right, which is always one of the biggest events of the year, right? So I think a couple of things to keep in mind here. Number one, from a New Orleans specific angle, remember that a lot of the security enhancements that they were making already in the city were aimed towards the Super Bowl, right? And that came out when we were doing reporting on the terror attack there, that they were trying to make things safer, getting set for this day. Obviously, that became an issue when the attack took place well before this. Now, second thing, the Super Bowl is always secure. And I was saying that the officials there, I was reading that officials there said there's going to be something like 2,700 law enforcement personnel when you add it all up, federal, state, and local. But the thing is here, Julia, you have an added wrinkle this year. We've never had a sitting president attend a Super Bowl, and President Trump is going to be there, he says, and that notice didn't come very early. So that's something that, they're going to tell you that they're ready for, adds a Secret Service component, but it does complicate things. And it will, from what we understand, widen some of the security perimeters at the very least that were already relatively wide in the city.
Yeah, I mean, for any of us who have covered or seen a former sitting president at one of these events or rallies, I mean, it certainly adds a whole other component with the Secret Service there and certainly locks more things down. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell made it clear earlier this week that he would not be following the Trump administration's lead regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion policies, also known as DEI. He said in a press conference on Monday that he believes the league's diversity efforts have made it better and attracted better talent. But some are saying that message was undercut after the league announced later in the week that they would remove the text, quote, "end racism" from either end zone of the field. We know that Trump, obviously, like we were saying, is going to be in attendance. So is the league caving to pressure here with the president in attendance? Are we seeing this continuation of this anti-DEI trend we're seeing during the Trump administration, or is this decision completely separate?
I think we've seen a trickle-down effect, if you will, to use a political and or economic term, from the Trump policies into kind of regular American life and into policies that are set by other governing bodies. For example, when he talked the other day about banning transgender athletes in women's athletics, the NCAA came out right away almost and said, yes, we're going to do that on our end. So perhaps this is something similar, taking away the end racism in the end zones and going with other logos. It takes all of us, or other slogans, and choose love. Okay. Mm-hmm. I remember being at a news conference in the first Trump administration in New York where Roger Goodell was talking about the state of the NFL. And at the time they were going through enduring the criticism from the President Trump at the time, for players who were kneeling during the national anthem. And Goodell is in a tough spot because, the league is made up of so many black players, of course, but the president says what he says. The fan base is, would have mixed views, obviously, on all of this. So he tries to play both sides. And sometimes that doesn't work out that well for him, right? It's tough in these situations to play both sides because I think people see through that and you come across as inauthentic. So I think that's the risk for Goodell, right, Julia, in the NFL, is that you're trying to please everyone, and in the end, sometimes you please no one because you're getting criticism from both sides. And people say, well, you don't really mean it. You're just doing this because of Trump. It's a tough spot.
It is a really tough spot. I mean, all of us watch sports regardless of our political affiliation. So I, don't envy the position that Nat'l is in. One of the other big storylines this game are allegations from fans that the NFL referees are biased towards the Kansas City Chiefs. I come from a family of Bills fans, so I can speak to that.
Well, then we know where your bias is.
Exactly.
Yeah, right?
I normally don't voice it, but here we go. That's been vehemently denied by both the NFL, the players, and the NFL Referees Association, which called it insulting. Connell, how are the refs and the league making sure they're calling a fair ball game, especially at a time when so many people are saying that the Chiefs have just been in too many Super Bowls?
Right. I mean, the pressure, the serious part of this comes because of the role that gambling plays in professional sports now. And we had a scandal years ago in the NBA, the National Basketball Association, with that involving officials. Now, why do the Chiefs play in so many Super Bowls? Well, they're a very good team, right? So that's part of it. So maybe if you're a very good team, you are less penalized than the team you're playing against. That could be one argument. The other argument is, though, by the numbers, the reason people are saying this, I was looking up the stats on it, is because the Chiefs have been committing far fewer penalties, let's put it that way, and have not been penalized for as many yards. So since 2021, they've played 12 playoff games, okay, the Chiefs. In those 12 games, how many times have they had more penalties than their opponents? The answer is 0.
Wow.
All 12. And then how many times have they more penalty yards than their opponents? 1 out of 12. So yes, the Chiefs are committing fewer penalties. Now, it's going to depend. You're a Kansas City fan, you're watching us, you're going to say, yeah, that's because they know how to play the game right. They're not breaking the rules, so there's no flags being thrown. If you're on the other side, you say the whole thing's fixed. But the numbers are what the numbers are. That's why people get worked up.
Yeah, absolutely. Something to think about it. So before we let you go, Connell, we have to ask, are you going for the Eagles or the Chiefs this year?
Oh, it's funny. Most people root for underdogs. I usually, it's an odd quirk. I usually like favorites. I'm like rooting for greatness. I'm like the guy rooting for Tiger Woods when everybody else is rooting for him to lose, However, I think I'll root, or I think the Eagles will win. Here's the thing. Yeah. I've been saying for weeks, and we have conversations around the office, and it's always, well, at some point the Chiefs are going to lose one of these games. But I'm so reluctant to pick because even when the other team plays better than them, they somehow figure it out at the end. That said, I like what the Eagles have done. They have a great defense. I love the Saquon Barkley story, so I'm going to stick with the Eagles. We'll see.
I'm sticking with the Eagles too. I'm not over the last what was it a few weeks ago when the Chiefs beat my Bills. So
yeah, that was it seems like you're over it. Yep.
Yeah, right. Connell McShane, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Julia.
This week, President Trump announced a new task force and a presidential commission. The move aimed to protect Christians from religious discrimination will be led by Attorney General Pam Bondi. Joining me now is the Hill's national political reporter, Cate Martel. Cate, thank you so much for joining us. Trump made the announcement at the National Prayer Breakfast in Washington on Thursday. Let's just take a listen at what he had to say.
The task force will work to fully prosecute anti-Christian violence and vandalism in our society and to move heaven and earth to defend the rights of Christians and religious believers nationwide.
So, Cate, what religious liberties does the president think are under attack here, and what power does Attorney General Pam Bondi hear in regard to this?
Well, Julia, Attorney General Pam Bondi does have a lot of power in carrying out and then justifying in legal lawsuits over the president's agenda. Now, the legal, issues that the president is talking about in these religious liberty issues are namely the anti-abortion movement. That, they are mentioning a lot of issues, but specifically the anti-abortion movement is something where that was one of President Trump's first executive actions during his first week in office. There were nearly 24 anti-abortion activists who were convicted of blockading access to an abortion clinic. He pardoned those people, and this is something that they are thinking.
I want to move on to billionaire Elon Musk. He's taken over headlines this week since Trump got into public office, but he got into a very public spat with Congressman Ro Khanna, a Democrat from California, after the lawmaker missed a vote to subpoena Musk. What do we know about the move to subpoena Trump's right-hand man?
Well, Julia, we know that Democrats are in the minority, but are trying to use as much power as they have to be able to push back. So they tried to subpoena Elon Musk to come and, as far as oversight, to explain what he's doing, and I'll explain these major changes that he's making to the federal government. We did see that Republicans kind of quickly voted that aside, so that did not actually end up being the case. But what we can see from this is just how rigid the power is to be in the minority. There's not much Democrats can do, but they're going to try as much as they can.
And we know that Democrats are really focusing on how to combat Elon Musk and his major influence in Washington now. But, what is this doing in terms of their own messaging? It seems like Elon Musk has really become, a target point for them. I mean, is Elon Musk unifying Democrats here? And could he stand to, help them stay unified going into 2026 and 2028?
That actually might be the best messaging that Democrats have right now, that post 2024, they were in a rough spot, and there were a lot of internal meetings to figure out what happened in 2024 and why they lost so soundly. And Elon Musk is this fairly controversial figure, that he is, popular among the MAGA movement, but he has been considered this boogeyman among Democrats, that they argue that he's an out-of-touch billionaire who acts erratically. So we are seeing that Democrats are really starting to rally around and trying to grapple with the idea of how can they package this messaging into a bite-sized way that they can then use on the campaign trail, and to argue that basically what Elon Musk is doing is not necessarily going to help Americans in their argument, and try to figure out how they can make that, a bite-sized message that can be used on the campaign trail.
I want to switch gears and talk about the Supreme Court before I let you go. Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor has spoken publicly for the first time since Trump took office about the highest court's presidential immunity ruling. Kate, what does she think the ruling does for public confidence in the nation's highest court?
Well, we see the Supreme Court Justice Sotomayor does think that this hurts public confidence in the court. Now, she was one of 3 liberal justices to strongly dissent from the opinion last summer to give presidential immunity to Donald Trump. And her argument is that this was not something that is necessarily good for the future of public trust in the Supreme Court, because once people think it's political and they don't trust it, that hurts its reputation. But you look at the makeup of the court, there are 6 conservative justices and just 3 liberal justices. So until that changes in the future, that will be the makeup of the court. And she very much is in the minority, Julia.
She absolutely is. It will be an interesting next 4 years for the court as they contend with a second Trump presidency. As always, Cate Martel, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Julia.
And that's it for today's Daily Debrief. I'm Julia Manchester. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Hills YouTube channel. And come back here soon for the intersection between politics and policy.